Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look then at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines with the political editors of the Daily Mirror, Pippa Crerar, and The Sun, Harry Cole. Welcome and good to see both of you. Plenty to discuss, as we'll see from the newspapers. So let's take a look. Starting with The Guardian, which leads on the gatherings at Downing Street, reporting that the Prime Minister's aide invited more than 100 staff to a party during the first lockdown. That's also on the front of the Metro with the headline Downing It Street. And The Eye leads on the same story, saying the Prime Minister and his wife are also said to have attended the event. To the front page of The Times, pressure mounts for 5 days of isolation, their headline, after health chiefs admitted they had misunderstood guidance from the United States when they opposed a change to the current rules. The Yorkshire Post reports on COVID-19 rates in the region, surpassing those of London. Boris Johnson is urging people to get their booster jab after the number of people attending appointments began falling after Christmas. That is the lead, as you can see, for The Sun. And the FT says Russia has threatened to walk away from talks on Ukraine, accusing the West of ignoring its demands for security guarantees. So we are joined then by the political editors of the Daily Mirror and The Sun, Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole. Welcome to both of you. And the first story, Pippa, right up your street, obviously, as the breaker of previous Downing Street gatherings. Downing It Street, says the Metro. Goodness.
Yeah, well, this is yet another alleged gathering at Number 10 during lockdown. Although, unlike the stories which I revealed, which were about this last year, the run-up to Christmas last year, this is about a gathering in May 2020, which was revealed by Dominic Cummings, the PM's former closest aide and now looks like arch enemy, on Friday in a blog post. And when Dominic Cummings claimed that this party had taken place, he said that there'd been an email trail, and lo and behold, tonight ITV News have found that email, which came from Martin Reynolds, who's the senior civil servant in the PM's private office, and it really is quite damning. It suggests that it was sent to up to 100 staff, apparently about 30 or 40 attended, and there were long trestle tables in the Downing Street garden laden with picnic foods, and he suggested people should bring their own booze. Now, this was on May the 20th, which, as you'll remember, was still at a point when people were banned from meeting up with more than one other person outside. And not half an hour before that party was due to kick off, the then Culture Secretary, Oliver Dowden, was addressing the Number 10 briefing and reminding people that they had to follow rules when it came to meeting up outside. It's really quite damaging for the Prime Minister, I think, this, because it directly implicates him. Multiple witnesses have suggested that he was at that drinks do with his wife, Carrie. And then on top of all of that, the Met Police have said tonight that they're going to talk to the Cabinet Office about this. As you'll know, they have been resisting investigating so far, claiming there's not enough evidence despite these multiple allegations of gatherings. This looks like it may finally have met their threshold. OK, interesting. Harry, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was David Cameron who once said that Boris Johnson's sort of greased piglet that gets away with things that other politicians just don't. But it does sort of feel like the waters are lapping pretty close to the Prime Minister now tonight. Martin Reynolds is probably a man that most people had never heard of until about a week ago. But there it is in black and white. It's always a sort of paper trail that gets you. And I think it is, Pippa just said there, I think it's very notable that the police have been quite quick out the traps tonight to say they are preemptively getting in touch with the Cabinet Office. Other gatherings or alleged gatherings and witness reports have been ignored, but it's quite hard to ignore a paper trail. And it looks like Dom Cummings has been trying, and for many, many months since his sort of unceremonious departure from Downing Street, to exact his revenge on the Prime Minister. And it looks like he's scored quite a hit tonight.
The Eye, bring your own booze. To some people, that really does underline it's not a sort of decompress for hardworking people. It is got a party tenor to it. And from what you described by the scene alleged in the garden, it does feel that way. Is this something that brings down a Prime Minister? Has it got a justification to it? Should they have explained these allegations better? Will it all be answered by the inquiry, which is underway? When will we get that information? I mean, there are so many questions here, Pippa, and so many implications, I guess.
There's lots of questions. I think first and foremost, people will be interested to see what happens to Martin Reynolds tonight, whether he's still in post by tomorrow morning. I think it makes it incredibly difficult, the email trail, for him to remain. But Sue Gray, who's the Whitehall enforcer, who's now looking at all these different allegations, almost certainly now, I'm told tonight, will be talking to the Prime Minister directly, who is said to have been at a number of the events that she's looking into. And if he is found either by her or indeed if the police decide that he's breached coronavirus regulations, then that puts him in very difficult territory, because throughout the number 10 strategy seems to have been to double down, to try and deny or indeed obfuscate. As so often is the case in these things, it's often the cover-up that gets you. But they created this sort of web of confusion, which she's trying to sort of, to cut through. And if the ultimate findings are that the Prime Minister is in the wrong, then that puts him in a difficult position with the public. That's not to say he's automatically going to go. This is midterm, he has lots of woes, but there's a long way to a general election. But anything which starts piling up emails in the inboxes of his already febrile Tory backbenchers is not good news for him, given all the speculation that's been going around in recent weeks about his own status as Tory leader.
The Guardian, fury as email reveals number 10 bring your own booze party. Fury from families of the bereaved, from the backbenchers and from the other political parties. Angela Rayner telling Sky News tonight it was disgusting and despicable. Ian Blackford too, who I spoke to, calling for both the resignation of Martin Reynolds and obviously the Prime Minister too. I think he's probably done that before on this. But where do you see this? Where do you see this heading, Harry? And how genuinely serious is this for the Prime Minister right now?
The problem with this one is this is really early on in the pandemic. This was the height of lockdown one, when things were incredibly strict, when millions of people, myself included, were locked up in a small flat and taking the rules incredibly seriously. This was a week before, a few days before the infamous sort of Dominic Cummings Barnard Castle trip. And I think what's really telling for me tonight there were other emails flying around the building at that time, with people going, hang on, are you sure this is a good idea? Are you sure, why are we encouraging people to do this? Now, I suspect there'll be a defence made by the Prime Minister and his aides to Sue Gray that this was a unique building, that all these people were working together. It wasn't meeting in public because they were in a workspace. Yeah, they might get off on a technicality, but in terms of normal voters, normal members of the public, and the spirit of the rules, I think this is you could imagine anyone making.
Yeah, and I looked it up actually, and Pippa would know better than many of us because the Mirror was among those who revealed the Dominic Cummings thing. The allegation of this is May the 20th. I think the Dominic Cummings thing broke on the 22nd of May, so just 2 days later. He's suggesting he was one of those who suggested it was a bad idea as he helped to reveal the allegations of this. If it had been the other way around and this had been a suggestion of a party after this broke, they might have cancelled it, I think, don't you?
Possibly, but it does shed a new light on some of the sort of stonewalling and obfuscation that we got from number 10 when we first started talking to people there about the Dominic Cummings story. And I think it also raises questions about, just how firmly the Prime Minister stuck by him at that time. As we all know, 40 or 50 Tory MPs were calling for him to go, but they circled the wagons around Dominic Cummings, and a series of senior cabinet ministers went out and defended him over the rule breach for driving all that way to Durham when the rest of the country was in lockdown. The Prime Minister took a political gamble and basically put his credibility on the line to support Cummings. And it makes you wonder why he was doing that. Was it just because, as we thought at the time, he has a tendency to double down and support those who are closest to him? Or is it the fact that a couple of days earlier, Dominic Cummings had warned the Prime Minister that he shouldn't have this bash in the garden of number 10? I mean, let's hope that Sue Gray asks some of these questions.
And do we know when that inquiry will report, just as a point of order as an interested journalist?
I feel quite sorry for Sue Gray, because just as every time it appears she's about to draw her big ring binder of investigation closed and hand it over to the Cabinet Office, another allegation drops. So she's has to interview more and more people. I suspect we're probably still now a couple of weeks away from seeing that. On Don Cummings, though, let's not forget, he may be throwing rocks now, but it's remarkable in his sort of 4,000, 5,000 word defence of his own actions last week, he published on Friday, that miraculously any party where he's necking red wine or eating cheese, or one of his key lieutenants or allies is at the centre of the frame, suddenly they're not parties, they're just work meetings, or that wasn't a party, leave my friends alone. But look over there at the Prime Minister. So I'm not sure anyone comes out of this particularly well.
Yes, the wrath of those who feel wronged, I guess. The Sun, I don't know if I should speak to you, Harry, about it, or to Pippa. Don't be a Novak, get boosted. Go on then, tell us about this one.
Well, scary results that have been ticking in for the last couple of days is actually the number of boosters has dropped off through the floor, whereas before Christmas we were doing nearly a million boosters across the UK a day. On Monday they only did 140,000, which is worrying people, because if you think about Pfizer, for example, that is a vaccine that once a batch of it is opened, it has to be thrown away at the end of the day if not enough people are coming forward. And there's worry that the take-up rate, only 2/3 of eligible adults have been boosted. The take-up rate is starting to wane. And don't forget, we heard all those big promises before Christmas about jabbing everyone eligible by the new year. It's clearly not. It's not happening.
And this with a whole host of potential policies that are mooted, talked about, or on the table. The 5 days of isolation, Prime Minister Pippa confirming they were looking at today. The rumours about lateral flow tests, whether they'd become monetised or whatever. Lots in the offing, really.
Yes, but if you look at the front page of the Yorkshire Post today, I think that's really interesting. Tomorrow, that's really interesting because they're reporting that COVID-19 rates in Yorkshire and Humber are overtaking the peak in London. And you'll remember that all the sort of concern that was prompted by the London peak about whether restrictions would have to be brought in and what the impact would be on ambulance services and the sort of provision that hospitals could provide. And that now that the infections in London, thankfully, are falling, and I think faster than a lot of scientists had predicted. Obviously, still lots of people in hospital, but it's the sort of grounds of cautious optimism. Yet attention is now turning to the rest of the country, and there are different parts of the country which wouldn't necessarily have the same sort of resilience, if you like, as London with its multiple and massive hospitals. The Yorkshire Post reporting how the Yorkshire Ambulance Services had to cut some of its non-emergency passenger transport. There's concerns about operations and whether they're going to be able to go ahead. So I think all eyes now turn on the rest of the country to see how they withstand Omicron. Obviously, the hope is that they withstand it as well as the southeast, but we're by no means there yet. So talk of lifting restrictions which are still in place, and reducing self-isolation periods and cutting lateral flows. Number 10 is very clear. Now is not the time to do that when there's still concerns over Omicron. We'll have to wait a wee bit longer to see those.
Harry, back to your paper too. What to do about energy bills? What's the latest from the government?
Well, it sounds like Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson had quite an important dinner on Sunday night, where they've decided actually, despite resisting a cut to VAT on energy bills, actually they're now looking quite clearly at doing that. Now, that itself, one source says, won't touch the sides of what's coming down the track for energy customers. A hike of £2,000 is only 5% of that is VAT. So perhaps in conjunction with perhaps a suspension of green levies, which could save 150 quid overnight on bills, and some more targeted help for poorer households, it does seem that the message has got through loud and clear. Actually, it's a long way to April, and it feels like the government are finally gearing up to some big retail offers, which, as the Sun, we would welcome.
Yeah, and that's the government's view. What's the view of one electricity company, which the FT has on its front page, Pippa?
Yes, it's a pretty astonishing story, really. It's OVO, the energy firm. Its offshoot SSE Energy has sent an email to customers giving them 10 tips to stay warm and help cut their energy bills this winter. And they include things like hugging your pet or your partner and doing star jump eating a warm bowl of porridge. You know, some of that might be common sense advice if you're working from home and it's a bit chilly. You keep getting told to get up from your desk. But if you're aiming at specifically people that are struggling to pay these massive energy bills, then it really seems very insensitive. And the supply has been called out by MPs tonight. I mean, it's really very tin-eared.
Yeah, eating ginger as well, which is not a cheap thing to buy on its own, is it? Anyway.